Janine is the Work Experience Coordinator in the Faculty of Science at the University of Alberta. In this role, she helps students explore different career options through internships and other paid work in their respective fields. And I believe she is right here. So please welcome Janine.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I hope everyone is enjoying the August long weekend. I'm currently in the mountains, hence a little bit of a weird background. So I'm the work experience coordinator for the science internship program at the Faculty of Science at the University of Alberta. And within my role, I'm basically connecting students with employers and help students to find work experience, especially relevant work experience. So with that being said, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I want to enhance why it is so important to gain relevant work experience during your degree, and why your university time is such a unique time because of all the different opportunities and support that is available to your fingertips. So I've prepared a little presentation. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see it. I hope that works. There we go. Can somebody just put their fingers up, thumbs up if it's needed? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So, as I said, I already gave a little intro as to why you should actually gain work experience. So how about we just jump right in and see what is kind of, what are the benefits of actually gaining work experience, and why is it so important, especially during your degree? Well, first off, while you're in university, you learn a lot of knowledge, and then gaining work experience allows you to actually apply this knowledge. And it helps you to actually figure out, is this actually the right field that I've chosen? Is this where I want to go in? Or maybe you are in an area where you think, I'm not too sure about this. Don't know if I really like this. And that's also great. Do not ever get discouraged if this is happening, because it also brings you a step closer to what you actually want to do. Besides that, you will definitely grow on a personal and a professional level. You will for sure develop your soft skills, such as communication skills, presentation skills, writing skills, because in a work environment, you obviously communicate differently than at university. And it's especially those skills, those so-called soft skills, that are very important for your work environment. So in addition, gaining work experience, and especially if those are relevant, let's say within the framework of an internship, you are building relationships with your employer. You have a foot in with a company. And if everything goes well and it's a successful experience, then there might be a possibility for actually getting a full-time position afterwards. Like, I work with a lot of students, and a number of them actually, after the internship, after they return back to university, completing their courses, they already have a full-time position for after graduation in their pocket, and they just can smoothly write university, finish it, and then start their job. So there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of benefits to gaining experience while you're at university. And as I mentioned earlier, while at university, yes, there are, let me see. Okay, there we went. There are, well, it's great to integrate work experience, but there are also a lot of opportunities available. And that's why it is actually so easy to tap into those and really make use of those. For example, on campus, there are student groups. There are so many that there's something for everyone. And same as volunteering opportunities on campus, off campus, or even working on campus. For example, you could work in a lab for a professor. and you're developing lots of soft skills, but you're also gaining professional skills. And all of these skills, they help you to build your resume, which is very essential for later on of finding a job, but also if you are deciding to go down that road of gaining relevant work experience within the framework of a co-op or an internship program. You have to build your resume, and with experiences from, for example, student group or volunteering, that is definitely an added benefit and gives you a competitive advantage. In addition to that, what also really helps to boost your profile is, and really helps you to grow, is study abroad. At the U of A, there's lots of opportunities for going abroad, and just in general, like studying abroad. Let's say you go for a semester into a different country, you get to know a different culture, a different language, maybe even, and you're really growing on a personal level. You have to come out of your comfort zone, so it is going to be uncomfortable, but besides that, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of benefits that you take away from it. For instance, you're growing, you're becoming more independent, more self-reliant, more confident. So there are a lot of benefits that you take away from it, because you actually grow the most outside of your comfort zone. For example, I myself, I've lived in multiple different countries, and I've loved all of my experiences. It was for sure not always easy. There are a lot of challenges that you come across, and it gets uncomfortable at times. It really forces you to step outside of your comfort zone. But this basically really has prepared me to now call Canada my home base, and allows me now to work within Canada. So, because I'm originally from Germany, and yeah, I just love living in different countries and getting to know different cultures, and especially learning to appreciate the little things. So yeah, I really encourage you, if you have the opportunity to do something like a study abroad, make use of it. And just with all the other opportunities, really start early and get involved. You will benefit from it, and you will enjoy it. Now, I also in the beginning mentioned that there is a lot of support. Besides all the opportunities, there's also support. And that support is needed in order for you to actually find more, like, okay, what could be maybe my career path? Like, what could be more of my interest? Or maybe what kind of other opportunities there are? Or maybe how do I actually get those opportunities? For example, the Career Center usually has lots of different programs, and for example, like job shadowing or mentorship programs, where you really can learn from others and already get an idea of what kind of different pathways are there. But same with, like, almost every faculty has their own internship or co-op program that allows you to actually really gain relevant work experience, but that also really helps you to set you up to find this position, to help you with your resume and your cover letter. Because for a lot of students, they think like, oh, a resume, cover letter, what am I going to even put in there? You can put a lot in there, and a lot of things that you actually think that are not relevant to put in there should be actually go in there, because it's all about those different transferable skills. So those centers, they are definitely there to help you. And yeah, for example, I'm with a science internship program, which allows students to integrate their work experience into the degree for up to 60 months, which is a long period, but it also allows the student to really learn a lot. And yeah, I help a lot of students with their resumes, and I often get the question, oh, I don't have any relevant work experience. Like I'm working, for example, at a retail store, like this I can't put on there, but that's actually what you should definitely put on there. So definitely make use of all these supports on campus, because they are there to help you and to make your experience so much more better. Yeah, so this was basically a quick a quick overview of what kind of opportunities are there on campus, what should you look out for, and why you should definitely do it, because it will help you. It will help you to grow. And I challenge you to step outside of your comfort zone, get out there, gain experience, get involved with other groups, maybe even take that jump and go abroad. But definitely, I challenge you to step outside of your comfort zone. Yeah. This was my portion. if you have any questions or want to learn more, you can definitely also contact me later. And yeah, thank you so much for letting me be part of this.
Awesome, thank you. That was very insightful because a lot of the times I know students don't know all the opportunities they can use for their degree on campus. So
Yes.
if anybody has questions, feel free to type them in the chat or raise your hand. I'll give you all a minute to do so. So the first question we have is, do you have to apply for the internship program? And what are the requirements?
Yes, yeah, you do. For the science internship, well, for all internship programs on campus, you have to apply. For the program that I run, usually I have students joining in their third year because you have to have a certain credit amount. So you have to have 48 credits by the time that you're allowed to go out, and you have to have a certain GPA, which for the science internship program is a 2.3. But all of our requirements can be also found on the Faculty of Sciences website, or yeah, just contact me later if you want more about the requirements. Yeah.
And so another one would be, which one do you believe would be the most helpful in terms of internship options?
The most helpful internship?
Yeah, and so if you're taking a basic science degree, for example, like
Yeah.
a general science, which one would you recommend to be the most helpful for a student?
Well, at the faculty, we have the science internship program. So there's only this one internship program. So you would join that program. And then within that internship program, there are multiple different positions. And then the student can choose to which position they want to apply for. Obviously, you would have to apply for multiple positions. And then it is basically up to the employer to hire the student that fits the position best. So there's a whole range of positions that you could apply for. So it's not like a specific program that the student would go in there. Like we don't differentiate, for example, between a general student or an honors student or a specialization student. They all have the same opportunities.
Awesome. Okay, and so the next one is, does all universities have internship options?
A lot of them do, yes. Not all universities have it, but definitely U of C has it, UVic, UBC. I mean, Waterloo is the biggest. They have the biggest co-op program, and they are known for their co-op program. But U of T as well, Saskatchewan, I'm pretty sure they do too. So yeah, I would just recommend you really look at the different universities, go into their faculties, because usually they are tied to a faculty. Sometimes they run centrally, for example, as Waterloo, but for the most part, they are with their different faculties. And then if you can't find an information there, I would definitely recommend you just email the university to learn more about it and see if they have one.
Okay, absolutely. And so another one is, as a high school student, will I have access to apply for an internship program?
Yes and no, unfortunately not, because you have to be already, at least with my program, I can only speak for my program. You have to be a university student and you have to have a certain credit limit. But I know that some universities, for example, the faculty, well, in the Faculty of Science, the Department of Computing Science, they have a high school internship program for high school students. So that might be an option if computing science is the field of your interest. Otherwise, there are some universities that do have also high school programs. Not too familiar if any other faculties have this on campus, but a source to check would be the Career Center.
Okay, I see. So there's a lot of similar questions asking about recent graduates looking to get experience, or even fourth year. Is there any kind of placement that you recommend for them?
Yes, so if you like as a recent graduate, I would recommend you to because you would not be eligible for an internship program that is run by a university, because usually these students need to be still a full-time student, and they need to have like a full course load left. However, let's say in the case of the U of A, I would recommend you to have a look on the Career Center job portal, Campus Bridge. They have a lot of job postings, especially over the summer. There are a lot of internship positions that do not, and kind of summer jobs, they kind of sometimes they use the wording for internships as well for summer jobs. And a lot of those do not require you to be part of an official internship program. So I would recommend you to check the Campus Bridge job portal for recent graduates. And then for fourth year student, if you still have at least 3 to 5 courses left at the time of going out, then you're still eligible, yes.
Okay, awesome. So one last question for you. So how early should we start preparing for our profile before applying to SIP?
Yes, that's a really good question. In general, I would just recommend you start right when you come to university, start getting involved and just take the journey because it's a fun journey. Now for SIP in general, to get prepared, there's not a lot of things that you actually need to prepare because we help you preparing your resume, but it's always great if you have some volunteering and some work experience. They don't have to be related. They can also be, as I said, just in a retail or a restaurant. But I would usually recommend reaching out to us in your second year and joining in your second year. And then you have a long period that you're actually part of the program. You can still fine tune your resume and definitely get the most out of it.
Okay, awesome. I
Right.
believe that is all the time we have for Janine right now. Thank you so much for all your insightful information. I'm sure everybody learned a lot. And so if you can, do you mind putting your contact information in the chat so that
Yes.
everybody can see you and get in contact with you later if they actually need to? Okay.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, please, if you have any more questions about the internship program or just experience abroad, just in general, and gaining work experience, please feel free to email me.
Yeah. Okay. Again,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me be part of it. Have a great rest of your session.
You as well. Feel free to stay for the rest of the sessions as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. And so we will now move on to our next speaker, which is Logan Wanchuk. Logan is a master's degree graduate in statistics from the University of Alberta with thesis research primarily in mathematical finance. He currently works as a manager on the model vetting validation team at Canadian Western Bank. Additionally, he has passed the required exams to achieve the Financial Risk Manager, or FRM, designation. So without further ado, please welcome Logan.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. So let me know if the audio or the visual aspects are lacking, but it should be okay, it seems like. So yeah. I prepared a presentation, so I will share my screen then. So you can see it well? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is with regards to what you can do with a science degree. I will cater it towards my experience and expertise in math and stats, but it's not limited to those majors. I've had coworkers and colleagues from engineering, from chemistry, from economics, from finance, of course. So I don't think that it is just applicable to math and stats. Of course, I was focused more on the quantitative side during my studies, but this is good information in general for any science degree too. So I did graduate with a bachelor's degree majoring in mathematics, actually, but advanced to a master's program in statistics at the University of Alberta. I had an excellent supervisor, Dr. Christophe Frey. So he is from mathematical finance, but of course, he does some teaching in statistics due to the overlapping topics in that regard. And my research was mainly applicable to financial credit risk management. Just some background, I did experienced some valuable opportunities along the way. For example, a teaching assistantship at the U of A during the first year of my master's degree. And then during the spring of my first year, I also got to work as a term instructor for introductory stats labs at MacEwan University. And as far as my career, in the second year of my master's, I was fortunate enough to start an internship at Canadian Western Bank. Then I was eventually hired as an analyst, and for the last 6 months, I have been a manager for model vetting on the Canadian Western Bank model vetting team. So vetting is another word for validation. So I'll get into that a little bit more soon. So to start with undergraduate experience, if you are taking intro courses in math and stats, you may notice there's a lot of calculus and linear algebra, but from my perspective, I became more interested or intrigued in the subjects as I advanced towards the senior level courses. So in particular, course projects were of interest to me. So going forward in your career, presentation skills are going to have utmost importance. So written and verbal, you may see that it's worth 20 to 30% of your grade, for example, but in life, presenting your findings, converting them from quantitative terminology to layman's terms that any person with general science knowledge would understand, that's very important. So the abstract and introduction, of course, should be enticing to a general scientific audience. And then, of course, the interior sections of a report would have more technical jargon in those regards, but it's definitely important to take pride in how you present your work and how you communicate the most important findings. So those will be skills that will stand the test of time, not just go towards a course grade. So just quickly through the courses that I was able to do some projects on. So as I mentioned before, if the reader is not given an understandable introduction to each aspect of the analysis, they may not appreciate all the efforts that you put into it. So let's say you did lots of quantitative tests and analysis, but the presentation is not clear, then the truth is that people may not give you full credit or full understanding as to what you accomplished. So a few good courses that I took were time series analysis, categorical data analysis, regression. So those are good opportunities to work with data and connect the theory to the practical applications. As far as research and professional development, just some advice. If you are planning to apply for another undergraduate degree or some graduate school program, you can focus on this in the summer prior to your final year of bachelor's. So during, let's say, September to November, you will likely be quite busy with your coursework, and you may want to, of course, you will want to focus on your grades and your, let's say, volunteering or internship opportunities. So, I mean, summer is a time for a break, but you should also maybe get your application ready, think about references that you're familiar with, and get the ball rolling in that. So for me in particular, I was able to be an NSERC, so Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. I was able to be a summer student the summer immediately following my bachelor's graduation. So I did some analysis using artificial neural networks. I won't get into detail on that, but also in the year of completion of my bachelor's, I went to the Statistical Society of Canada National Student Conference. So that was in Winnipeg that year. And I was able to extend one of my course projects and present the results at that conference. So just some good opportunities. At that point, I was not so experienced with presentations or communicating my results. So these types of experiences in your third, fourth years of undergraduate are are very important, I would say. So moving now to graduate experience. So a very important aspect of integrating into the graduate program is managing your responsibilities. So lots of you, whether you're in math or stats or another faculty, you may have a teaching assistantship. So you will have different types of considerations to make when you have to grade, when you have to teach, when you have to do your coursework. So overall, I would say difficulty, if you are choosing something that you're passionate in, the transition from undergraduate to graduate is quite natural. But of course, you'll have some new challenges, and time management, of course, will be critical. And in that regard, grading and explaining key concepts, even from the introductory courses, will be rewarding to both you and the student. So if you can explain the building blocks of the degree, the foundation of the topic that you're studying at a graduate level, that makes you feel more confident about your own skills. Even though your coursework will be much more advanced, teaching and grading should give you more confidence. You can help others become inspired to learn about these subjects. And at some point, validating others' work will be key. If you advance to become a manager at some point, you will have to communicate with people who used to be in the same situation as you and help them grow either as a student or as an employee on your team at work. So that's why I think teaching was a valuable experience, definitely. To continue with some discussion on graduate school, you do have a year to consider different avenues that you may take in your particular research interests. So you will not be required before you start your program to commit fully to one topic in research or one supervisor. There'll be some flexibility. So in terms of the different structures, you can take a course-based program, which is good for finding a job quickly. However, if time or other constraints are not overly pressing, then I'd say the full experience of writing a thesis is certainly worth the time. Of course, it varies for everyone, but I thought that despite the fact that I was not going to advance to a PhD program, from my preference, I still thought the writing of the thesis was very valuable. Acquiring that research knowledge, discussing the topic with a leading professor from university, it was a very invaluable opportunity. Of course, in your first year, you should pay attention not only to your professors, but other professors in the department and see which of those have research interests that align with your preferences. So you can focus on a topic that you have lots of familiarity with, let's say an undergraduate, or maybe new methodologies will intrigue you and you'll want to build on that. So definitely the first year of your master's, there are lots of opportunities and that can lead you on paths that you may not expect. So, be open to the unexpected. For graduate coursework, there is some flexibility. So there will be some core courses, but let's say for the remaining 2/3 of the courses, you can tailor this course load to your own liking. So which courses are you more interested in, which will contribute to your knowledge in terms of progressing on your research, and which subjects maybe can you meet professors that align with your research interests. So definitely plan your, especially the second term of your master's, maybe you'll have a bit more experience, a bit more thought, and you can really put more conscious effort to choose courses that are appropriate for your interests and for your potential to advance in your research. So applied research will fit the requirements to obtain a degree, but theoretical rigor is definitely necessary to progress to a PhD program, for example. So it depends what your preference is. Will you go into industry or will you go into academia? So in that regard, keep your options open. Even if you plan to have a job in industry, like I said, the experience of writing a thesis, spending one more year, possibly even with an internship opportunity, certainly does not hurt. On the other hand, though, you don't want to be too much on the other side. If there's too much theory, it may be difficult to get career opportunities if you don't have some data analysis or practical applications. So let's say you are doing some sort of quantitative research, maybe apply it to healthcare, economics, finance, insurance. Having even a project or two in that regard will certainly help your resume and make you more attractive to potential employers. I don't have much time to go into this, but my research was just based on some new international financial reporting standard that was made effective in 2018. So it was quite pertinent and timely to analyze something that was relevant for financial institutions. And essentially, we just looked at a trade-off between recognizing credit risk of borrowers, but also managing the avoidance of excessive income volatility. So essentially establishing some threshold, what is a significant increase in credit risk, and then analyzing the asset value, let's say of a borrower or a firm in different settings and different distributions to model it. So I don't have much time to go into that, but just allude to that briefly. In terms of transitioning to a career, as I mentioned before, if instructing or becoming a professor is not in the cards for you or not your preference, you should definitely leave yourself options. And an internship opportunity is a great way to do that. So having that on your resume, even for 2 to 4 months, is going to give you a big advantage over those who don't have any relevant internship. So if this is your objective, discuss with many professors in your first year of your master's, for example, or undergraduate program in your 3rd and 4th years. The worst that could happen is that a professor says no. So anyone that has remotely similar interests, it does not hurt to speak to them. They'll be very knowledgeable. And the worst that they could say is that they don't have any opportunity for you. But most likely they will have a good discussion with you, and you would hope there'd be at least one that would open some avenue to you in which you could get some practical experience. So for me, in the 2nd year of my master's, I was able to begin as an intern on the risk management department in Canadian Western Bank, so on the model validation team. So my supervisor helped with that, and it was a very valuable opportunity just to apply my research in a practical setting. So in general, companies are pleased to give students who are passionate about their research a chance. However, it is a numbers game. So you may not get the first opportunity that you look at, but put your eggs in different baskets and hope that you can get one opportunity, and that'll just open the door to advance your career. So from my perspective, just going back to credit risk modeling, I essentially validate and backtest these models, learning the data structure, and of course, learning the best practices in the financial industry in general. So I had some excellent coworkers, and definitely the internship experience gave me a better idea of what I was getting into. And fortunately for me, it was something that I was passionate about and enjoyed. So as I mentioned before, it never hurts to be employed when you finish your thesis or a degree. So it leaves you opportunities to apply for another company or continue in a permanent position at the same company. So definitely in the latter part of your master's or PhD or even a bachelor's degree, it is certainly nice to have some sort of internship lined up, just because it gives you more options. In the meantime, you aren't pressured, and typically if an intern is integrated well into the company, even if they don't have a permanent position, they may offer you a shorter term contract, which will buy you some time to look for other permanent opportunities. As I mentioned before, there are other ways you can advance your career. Professional designations. So there's CFA, FRM, which I pursued. SOA is Society of Actuaries. There are various ones, but these as a basis will advance your knowledge and eventually they'll advance your career. But the motive of these should be to learn and not to instantly get some promotion, I would say. So maybe time is running short, but there are various possibilities. So Alberta Health Services will have data analysis required. Investment companies will look for advanced quantitative skills in their research opportunities for investment analysis in that regard. Government of Alberta can have economic analyst jobs, so regulations, policies, initiative design, etc. So there are lots of opportunities. Insurance companies, Workers' Compensation Board, Blue Cross, these involved rare events, but events that have large amount of loss that have a potential. So there's a flood or a tornado in that regard. So actuarial analyst positions are a natural extension of some people studying statistics, but as I mentioned before, the Society of Actuaries program is advisable for those people who want to get a head start. Statistics Canada will also have many applications with regards to that. So just to conclude, there's no need to get stuck in one industry. There's potential for future branching out and transitioning to a different career to your liking or benefit. And lastly, simply obtaining degree is not the key aspect. It's how you obtain the degree, what type of opportunities you created for yourself, and what you do immediately after degree will be critical to your path to success. That may sound difficult, but it will come naturally as you just essentially open as many doors as possible with respect to your interests. And overall for math and stats, I found that there are lots of exciting opportunities in both industry and academia. So hopefully this was useful to you, and thank you for your attention. So questions are welcome if time permits, of course.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. So we do have one question, or a few questions actually. So the first one is regarding your internship program in your master's. So they asked, what time during your master's program did you apply for it? And was it specific to grad students?
Okay, so first of all, it was specific to grad students, and I applied during the spring and summer of my first year, so that I was able to start the internship in the fall of my second year.
Okay, and was it an intensive process, would you say?
The application process?
The application process, yes.
I would say moderately. There was an application process both from the student side and the professor's side. So definitely your supervisor will help, but we essentially just writing a few paragraphs, outlining your research goals, your expectations for what you will learn during your internship that are applicable to your research. So you don't have to be specific, but you just have to have a general enthusiasm and plan for potential learning during this experience. So overall, yes, I would say it was not too difficult to apply, but of course it takes time. So you have to maybe get started right when you maybe finish the April term, or even now in July, if you, not to say it's too late, but it's better to start earlier in the summer to give yourself time.
Absolutely, starting early is the best thing. So another question is, do you have any recommendation for somebody with an engineering Master of Science degree who doesn't necessarily have much working experience? considering that they've already have some research in progress?
Yes. So, for example, in risk management, definitely these FRM exams are useful. That's very specific, though. In general, it would be nice to just have some internship, because an engineering degree is useful for many quantitative jobs. So if you just give yourself a chance for a few months, that could be enough to get into many industries. So I would not say that engineering degree is preventing someone from getting into the financial industry. It's just the initial internship might be difficult to obtain. You might have to ask many people, or maybe see if your professors have any connections too.
Okay, and so we have one last question due to time. So is it difficult to branch off to another industry if you are an applied math major?
So, well, I suppose applied math would give you more options than pure math, of course. But again, it would be good to have some exam or some internship. So I was not from applied math, but I know that any sort of industry experience on the resume will certainly help. And I mean, highlight a project that you had completed, maybe some coding skills to go along with your math knowledge, and that could become more attractive to the employers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation. If any of you have any other questions for Logan, he will be sticking around for our networking session. And you can also put in your contacts in the chat if possible, if anybody wants to contact you by email.
Sure.
And yeah. Okay.
Okay, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Okay, so on to our next speaker. Our third speaker is Graham Gilchrist. Graham brings to Biological Carbon Canada a large breadth of knowledge in farm management systems and greenhouse gases. Prior to BCC, he spent 6 years with the Farmers Advocate Office in Alberta, building industry stewardship, best practices for Alberta's carbon markets, and offset trading. He provided advice to other technical experts on evidence-based solutions and persuaded the aggregation industry to standardize their purchase approaches. He was successful in setting up the Carbon Offset Trade Association, an industry-leading voluntary market regulation. Graham now brings to BCC and rural Canada this expertise. He is also a professional agrologist with over 30 years of experience serving the needs of rural Canada, and he holds licenses to practice agrology in both Alberta and British Columbia. So please welcome Graham.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you to the folks that came before me. The talk. The question I got asked is what to do with a science degree, and what I have found over my time, ultimately to the folks that are listening in the audience, is you have to be able to tell a story. You have this journey of a hero, and the fact that there's a problem to solve, and the gentleman or the lady has to break through their personal challenges, and ultimately the dragon gets slayed, and the hero comes back to the castle, and you're gonna, Graham, what the hell does that got to do with what am I going to do with a science degree? My experience started as a young kid in southern Alberta, and went down and did the University of Alberta tour in grade 12, and ended up ultimately going to Montana State University, where I earned a bachelor in agricultural management. What that gave me was an introduction to all of the systems that interact with agriculture. So it gave me a good understanding of the systems of crops. how they breathe, and how they interact with the sun, and ultimately how they create their proteins and starches and sugars, and ultimately what they grow, and then they have something to sell. So, and in the livestock systems, the similar processes, how the gut worked, how the rumen worked, and ultimately you ended up with a product that you might want to eat. The beef is fairly tasty. And if you pull that back a little bit, you go to a 5,000 foot level, also got exposed to the ecology and how landscapes function, how nature does not like a vacuum. It will put something there to grow, whether it's a weed or whether it's a fungus or whether it's a plant. That system will interact, and it is dependent on how good or healthy the soil is, or how good and healthy, in some cases, the air is, and how healthy the water is. But I was also exposed then, because of the ag business, I was exposed to other systems, other circles of how things operate. And over the years, exposed to the business requirements and cash flows of businesses, and ultimately cash flows of markets, and come to the realization that cash moves very much like water. It moves through the system. It hates barriers. It will move to places that give it less barriers than others. So whether that be taxes or things, you start to realize that cash moves through a business much like blood moves through a cow. That's the systems that you're dealing with. And I was also then exposed, because of the business side, dealing with the legal system, ranging all the way from contracts, but also how legislation works and how that interacts on the ecology, on crops, on livestock. So when I got done the degree, came back, and then I started to apply that to learning with the Department of Agriculture as a young district agriculturalist. So imagine you've got your degree, you got a job, you've got a pickup truck, and now you get sent to a county here in Alberta, and you are responsible for solving every problem of 500 farmers within your county. That ranged anywhere from my crops not growing, I made a metric error on my seed treatment and I killed my whole field, to you had livestock disease. And because also the department did a lot with rural Alberta, you also got exposed to seed cleaning plants, and how the Ag Society ran the curling rink in Manyberries, as an example. And you started to learn the systems within that county, how the information flowed, who the people that you were dealing with. And ultimately, you quickly learned that science is a people system as well. And that started me on my career journey, what I did with a science degree. So over 30 years, it has been an application of what I learned in systems. And so the time I specialized in farm management and specialized in the corporate side of agriculture, I was dealing with taking the science and then applying other logics, whether that be a legal construct. So what does the common law say? What does the legislature say on how you can buy and sell grain in this province, or buy and sell livestock in this province? And the other things of tax. So dealing with farm systems and human systems in how families interact. How a son will trust a mother, or a dad may not trust a son, and how that impacts succession and the ability of a farm to essentially, as a single person led by, and how and farms, ranches hate delegation, and how whether or not you can move that farm successfully across to another generation, and at the same time structuring that farm so it pays the least tax possible, often requiring agreements and requiring those. So you're dealing with you're interacting with multiple systems. I'll take a step back and say, what does have to do with a science degree? It is the systems that you learn, or that I learned, and hopefully you continue to learn. And ultimately, you need to know how they work in order to understand a problem, because often a problem shows up when a system has failed, or you want to take advantage. So if you have a weed that shows up in a field, it's not a problem unless you don't need it or you want to get away from it. But it shows up because that ecology system requires something to grow there. If you have a ergot that shows up in the head of a rye plant, that is a system that indicates that the ecological system was really good that year for those spores to go. The other thing that has changed certainly is technology, and it has added new systems. You know, the fact that we are speaking over something as cool as, you know, video technology. When I first started, I was pretty cool as a young, you know, 29-year-old district, because I got a radio phone, and that meant I could actually make a phone call from my truck, literally through a two-way radio. And when I was at university, we had just finished doing linear programming for finding linear solutions to farm management questions by punch cards. And the Apple, I want to say the Apple with the green screen had just shown up. And I was typing documents in a two floppy disk system where I had Windows on one disk and I could put Word on the second disk. And the technology has changed so much where now there's more power, somebody says, in my cell phone than what we put on the computer that went to the moon. We have, in science systems, we have a flashlight for all in Saskatchewan. It's part of the super collider system, and it generates light to the point where you can see the mycelia on the root hairs of plants and crops and understand their DNA and understand which mycelia work well with different plants. Why is that important? Well, there was a set of dandelions in the tailing pond sand up at our oil sands. And for whatever reason, you have this great body of reclaimed sand that's really hard to grow stuff. Part of it is because the part of it is because the soil pH, but understanding that somebody got the question of why does that dandelion grow there when everything else doesn't? And what we found is the mycelia had adapted to the point where it could survive in that system. So why is mycelia important? It's a fungus, but it's the go-between between a plant root and the soil. So it dissolves the phosphorus, the nitrogen, and moves it across and dumps it into the root hair. And in return, the mycelia sucks on the moisture out of the root hair, and that's how it lives. So what you're going to find with a science degree is that you're going to be exposed to systems, and they are all interconnected. And the challenge you have as you move from your university career into business is how do those systems work? And if you're being asked to solve a particular problem, you have to understand then how did that system fail before I can fix it. The other things I think you should deal also with a science degree is talked about in those previous speakers, is you've got to go get your professional practice. So that means in agriculture, you're dealing with being or obtaining your professional designations, whether that be a professional biologist or professional agrologist, or if you're more into the hard sciences, a professional engineer. So as you go through your undergrad, you need to be prepared and understand what are the requirements. And as for one time, I sat on the one of the adjudication committees for the Provincial Institute of Agrologists, and found out you had somebody coming out with a science degree but who forgot to take a couple other courses. So they didn't qualify, or we asked them to go back and take 1 or 2 more courses before they, even though they had a degree, they needed to get their license as a technician in training or as an agrologist in training. So be prepared to have those conversations with the professional body of your, as you go down whatever science discipline you're going in, to understand the requirements. And then on top of that, you have technical certification. So as a previous speaker, technical certification in finance, we see a lot of what they call CCAs, the Certified Crop Advisors, out across Canada that are have shown technical prowess in how plants grow. And that goes all the way down to, every once in a while, I run across the fact that you need a certificate that says I know how to drive a quad in order to do the work. So from that, ultimately, now what I do is I want to say I'm an expert generalist, and the fact that I know a whole lot of stuff, but it's fairly thin. And then I have to go out and find somebody to really understand that rabbit hole I want to go down. So in the case of greenhouse gas, I spend a lot of time dealing with scientists to understand that if you put something in the rumen, we change how the bacteria interact and dissolve the material. And ultimately the methane that they produce, the cow burps out of that, we want to decrease that. And then how do you do that on a practical sense? And then secondly, how do you move that into a market commodity? And you're buying and selling offsets that says, I reduced my greenhouse gas by X number of tons, here's my certificate. So that requires a whole bunch of systems coming together. You have good science to understand how it takes for a continuous cropping system to increase slowly, 0.2, 0.3% a year, the organic matter in soils. And how do I tell the difference between what a management change does, like conservation cropping, or is it a climate change? So is parts of this province getting drier over time, or part of it getting wetter? And so to understand that science and understand the management change, then we're also stacking on their financial systems. So what evidence do we need to put forward to satisfy an audit with the same standard that accountants go in and deal with a set of books? And then we also have to understand the legal systems. So understand that these are tradable instruments. So do the rules of our financial systems in the case of financial standards, and in the case of anti-fraud systems, do they satisfy those needs? So ultimately, you're dealing with multiple systems coming together to deal with specific commodity. And so that's what I find exciting, what I do now. But it's back to that question, what do I do with a science degree? You're understanding a system and how it interacts with other systems. And ultimately, I think that's what I would like to get across today. Ultimately, folks, it's have fun. You've got to be able to speak. You've got to be able to interact with people, doggone it. And ultimately, they're the ones that you do. Public speaking is good. Yes, I still get butterflies when I do it, but the more you do it, in some cases, the easier it gets. So anytime you've got a chance to stand up and speak and make a presentation, you've got to be able to get it down into a 5-slide deck or not. Over my time, understand that people are visual. So God forbid those that have 400,000 characters on one slide point to get it. Understand, can you make that into a visual, and can you communicate well to the people? Deputy Minister I dealt with it sometimes said, if you've got more than 5 slides on your deck, you've told me too much. So can you suck that? Can you suck the system down to the point was Here's the decision I want you to make, and here's why in 5 slides or less. Congratulations on getting to where you are today. And you are going into an area that continues to move. And I'm continually blown away as I try to read the scientific journals as what keeps moving. I remember not that long ago talking to a group of undergrads in ag business, what I was just being exposed to when I was taking a few upper grad master's level courses in university is now fully embedded in an undergraduate degree. And so it will continue to move on you. And so what you learn today will be old news in about 5 years. No different than, you know, gee whiz on a Apple II, you know, green screen to now what you can do with an iPad and talk around the world. The other thing that was interesting, and I'll share with you as I shut down here, Raja, is gone to a few conferences, and the one that really was interesting was an international gathering of ag economists in Vancouver 3 years ago. And it was exciting to see the master's students there and a couple of the undergrads that were doing their I guess undergrad thesis got to present, and they got to understand that my thesis may fit into your thesis, and to understand that there is collaboration that we could do. And the master students understanding that I really know how to grow wheat north of Mexico, but how do I deal with that if I'm going to take the same application and try to grow rice in northern Thailand? Those are what was the cool part of listening in on it. So I'll conclude there with my presentation. Thank you for your opportunity to speak. I'm open to any questions. I understand it looks like you've everything shut down, but if you've got questions, please type them in, and I look forward to trying to answer them. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for all that information. There's a lot that personally, for living in Alberta for so long, you don't realize with the agriculture industry. So we have one question. Anshuman, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Or if anybody else has other questions, you can also type them in the chat. In the meantime, Graham, do you mind putting your email in the chat so that everybody can contact you afterwards as well?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay. So one question came up is, how can a math major get into agriculture?
That's a very good question. Ultimately, you are dealing with pluses and minuses. I know it's more than just math. But in the case of algorithms, and the case of taking calculus and ultimately I need an answer. So how do I take risk in the case of ag business management? How do I understand that risk formula? How do I understand using random number generators in order to understand the risk of a cash flow system? That's what I've been exposed to. So if you can deliver me a particular, I'll back up about this slide. When you look at a cash flow, you've got revenue, you've got expense, and you break it down, and ultimately you've got a profit. It's fairly simple to say in math, I start with so many dollars, I subtract expenses, and ultimately I have a net profit. But what I have found over time to understand the system risk is to understand, in the case of cash cost of goods sold, what's the likelihood of the lower and the higher? And can I put a random number generator in the math to say that if I'm dealing with a system risk, does that cost of goods sold go anywhere from $40 a ton all the way to 180 as an example? If I deal with administration risk, if I deal with cost and ultimately direct expenses. So doing the math means that I need to understand and to design for me that system. And I need to understand the relationships as if I move cost of goods sold, does it also, what's the relation then between that and direct expenses? So that's the math on the financial system that needs to get done. And so it's not linear anymore. You're dealing with ultimately a bell curve at the very bottom. How tight or how wide is the profit on a bell curve? And can you show me that so I understand the ends, I understand the risk, and ultimately, how am I dealing with the ends of the tail, or am I dealing with the stuff in the middle?
Absolutely. So I unfortunately have to cut you short just due to time right now. Are you planning on staying for the networking session we have?
I was asked to stick around, yes, so.
Okay, awesome. So you guys will all get to ask your questions to Graham once we start the networking session, but we also have one last speaker we need to get through before we do that. So again, thank you, Graham, so much for that. Thank you. And so for our last speaker, we have Nikki Paskar. So Nikki completed her Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Conservation Science from the University of Alberta. She has conservation experience in protected area conservation, ecological monitoring, and wildlife research, and has been deeply involved in the local environmental community for many years. So please welcome Nikki. If she's here at the moment.
Hi, I am here. Just trying to figure out how to share my screen. Just give me 1 second here.
Sure.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, looks good.
Excellent. So hello, thank you all and good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here to chat with you all about a career in science, particularly from my perspective in biology or environmental science. So as mentioned, my name is Nikki Paskar. So I did my Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Conservation Sciences from the University of Alberta. So this program is in the AILS faculty, or Faculty of Agricultural Life and Environmental Science. I majored in conservation biology, but there's a number of other options kind of within that program and adjacent to that program, whether that's biology. Within the AILS, there's land reclamation, rangeland management, environmental economics and policy, and human dimensions of environmental management. I don't have a master's, and I would consider myself an early career professional. So my current role is as a conservation coordinator with the Edmonton and Area Land Trust, which I've been doing for the past 2.5 years. So if you haven't heard of my organization before, we are a charity dedicated to conserving land in Edmonton and area. So similar to the Nature Conservancy, but on a local scale. So we secure land by donation, and then we steward that land in perpetuity to ensure that the ecological values of the land are being maintained in the long term. So my background and experience is in conservation, particularly working for nonprofits, but I've also done some ecology research and fieldwork as well that I'll touch a little bit on. So first things first, I wanted to share the way that I've always viewed my career, which is that each role that you have, whether that is a job, whether it's a volunteer experience, a workshop, is its own stepping stone towards where you will end up. So the stepping stones and the path for each person will look completely different, and there are a million different ways that you could end up where you want to. Generally in the science field, as people have said before, you do need to have that base of technical knowledge that you're going to get from your education. So, being able to choose a program, the right program for you is important. So that's one key factor in just deciding where you want to be and what you need to do to get there. Personally, I found 3 things to have kind of been the most impactful in my journey so far. In such a competitive job market, you really can't be approaching your career kind of just passively and just hoping that opportunities will come along for you. It's up to you to be very proactive in your approach, be your own champion, be your own advocate. One of the key ways to do this is to network and build strong relationships with people in the field. So whether that's your peers, whether you have a mentor, professors, people in the industry, whoever, that's super important, and that's point number 2. And then lastly, this one isn't quite as important as the last 2, but when you are entering a competitive field, it does help to, take some extra workshops to gain additional experience and be able to put that on your resume. So I'll go through just the pathway that I took to get to where I am now. I know I don't have a ton of time for each one, but I'll just give you a very brief overview of kind of what the job entails so that you can get a better sense of some options in biology for, during or after a degree in environmental science. And then how I got that job to highlight actually what factors contributed to being able to get that job in a very competitive market. And you'll kind of see in my story the themes of volunteering and networking kind of coming up again and again, which for me personally was a very key part of my career. So my very first job related to this field was working in wildlife rehabilitation. So I worked for a summer as a wildlife technician, intaking and caring for wildlife, and also managing the hotline. So that was a lot of dealing with the public and problem solving. And it was actually this part of the job that was super helpful when applying for future jobs. And how I got this job was that I had volunteered a couple of times before the internships came up. So I had already been networking with the staff and showing initiative. There was also a 2-day intro to wildlife rehabilitation course that was offered in Saskatoon. So I took a Greyhound out there and I did the course before applying. Originally, it was an unpaid internship, but they ended up getting some funding to offer me a paid wildlife technician position. My second summer as a student, I had planned on working for the rehab again, but unfortunately they didn't receive funding for my position that year. And since most of the other job postings had already passed, I approached my plant science lab professor when I was in school, and I just asked if she knew of any other volunteer opportunities so that I could at least gain some experience. She introduced me to a plant pathology lab and got me a job there for the summer, where I continued into the school year. So I worked on clubroot experiments in the lab, in the field, and also in the greenhouses. And although plant pathology wasn't directly associated with where I wanted to be, it was more related to agriculture, and I was still really interested in the biology side of things. It was still kind of adjacent to it, to what I wanted to do, and I learned really valuable skills here. And then while working in the plant pathology lab, I would kind of chat with other grad students who were working on their experiments in different subjects. I would ask about their projects, just kind of see what was going on, just ask what their research was like. And then there was one student that I often talked to, and she was working on rangeland plant sampling. And it just came up one day that she was looking for some volunteers. I volunteered with her for just a little while, and then she got me a paid lab job with her supervisor. So that was how I worked in that one. Then I got a few internships conducting butterfly surveys in 2015 and doing some house wren nest box monitoring in 2016. Both of these were at the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory, and I got a small grant from the Serving Communities internship program, which unfortunately isn't active anymore at this time, but maybe in the future. Someone had actually reached out and told me about these opportunities and recommended me, and then I was able to do the second internship because the first one went so well. 2016 was when I did a summer internship with the organization that I am now permanently employed with. So this was kind of a mix of environmental education and outreach and stewardship fieldwork. And I had gotten the interview for the job because even though I didn't have a ton of experience, I had volunteered for just one information booth for the organization previously, and the staff had remembered me. I also did have some public outreach experience as president of the U of A chapter of the Wildlife Society, which is a position that I held for 3 years. And then 2017, so this was my first kind of more remote fieldwork experience. I worked for 4 months in the Yukon tracking radio-collared juvenile squirrels for a PhD student at what's called Squirrel Camp. And by that time, I did have some field experience. I had the wildlife handling experience from the rehab, but then kind of what set me apart was that I was recommended to the grad student by a peer that I had met while volunteering for another ecology project doing elk pellet plot surveys at Yahatinda. And then I moved on to some government work. So I worked at Elk Island National Park with Parks Canada as kind of a resource conservation student. This one was almost entirely field work. So it was a lot of wildlife and plant surveys, a lot of monitoring. My past experience by now was definitely the most important contributing factor. But again, to bring in that networking and sharing and community aspect, I did also have the head biologist had been an acquaintance that I had met through the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory previously. So working for the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society as a conservation assistant was kind of my first real job after I completed my degree. So there wasn't any field work involved in this role, but I had been volunteering on the conservation committee for the chapter for many, many years, I think like 6 years. And so the executive director had kind of created a new position to bring me on to work, and I worked to support Indigenous-led conservation projects. And this is where I'm at now. The two photos here are not from my current job, but I just couldn't find Jenny. So everything kind of culminated to lead me here into this role now. My job now involves a lot of different things, from kind of the fieldwork and environmental monitoring side of things to managing our communications and outreach, to program and volunteer management and more. I did have a long history of involvement with the organization with kind of these demonstrated successes and relationships with the staff, and that's really what helped the most, I think, in addition to kind of having diverse work experience. So that's allowed me to wear many hats in the organization, which if you do want to work for a small nonprofit, having diverse work experience is really important, because you usually do have to kind of take on many different things, wear many different hats. And I just wanted to highlight this too, because I don't think this is talked about much in the biology field. I personally think that short-term or even one-time volunteer opportunities can be really important, especially as you first start your career. Maybe there's not that much available, or you haven't found it yet. Potentially you're limited with time with classes and jobs and just trying to keep yourself afloat, but you still want to get involved. These ones that I listed here just were ones that I did, and these were all between 1 and 3 days of volunteering each, and were, again, those stepping stones that I used to bolster my resume, gain experience, and get those longer term work positions. I also think that joining boards and committees can also be helpful, again, kind of under that theme of diversifying your experience. I continue to sit on a number of them today because I enjoy being really involved, and it's also a really great place to network and build those relationships up. For me, having mentors to guide me has always been a really important part of my journey, and I highly recommend, no matter what field you're into, math, science, engineering, whatever it is, that you find yourself a mentor. There are, many different formal mentorship programs out there, especially in STEM, but you can also seek informal mentorship from teachers, professors, or just professionals. I actually just recently started a Women in Nature mentorship program with Nature Canada, and I can tell you that it is helpful at whatever stage in your career that you're at. Mentors can really become your champions. They can help you find opportunities. They can help provide guidance as you make decisions. They can just really be, right by your side. So what can you do with an environmental science degree? Just keeping things really simple right here. Here are some potential jobs that you can get. I don't really have time to talk about each one, but feel free to ask questions during the breakout sessions if you'd like more information or you're interested in kind of the different options that you could go. Is this field right for you? Definitely this is not a field that you're going to get rich in. It takes a ton of work, but it's the perfect job if you're looking for something rewarding and meaningful, and if you're wanting to do something that you are passionate about. So if you're passionate about the environment and you want to make a difference, I absolutely love my job. I have zero regrets. It's super rewarding. Unfortunately, it isn't all holding cute animals either. There is a lot of hard work, a lot of getting dirty, depending on what you're doing. The photo here is me flinging bison poop so that we could come back. and see how many new ones were along the transect. So we definitely get dirty for sure. And then my top tips. So I've touched on a lot of these already, but I'll just reiterate a few of them. When you volunteer, that's the first one, not only are you gaining valuable life and work skills that you can add to a resume, but again, you're also building up your network and making those new connections. Diversifying your experience, we talked a bit about that. That will really make you a more well-rounded candidate and can really set you apart from others. We talked about networking, we talked about building those relationships and finding a mentor. And what I didn't talk about much, but I think is incredibly important, is refining your communication skills. That's a really huge one. Just don't underestimate the importance of transferable skills like writing, public speaking, and just generally good interpersonal skills. For writing, developing really good, strong writing skills is hugely important in almost every field. And it does take work and practice. It is definitely true that a lot of younger students just don't have high quality writing skills. That's something that people are really struggling with right now. And when we interview for interns at my organization, even when the role is largely field-based, we still ask for a writing sample. It's super important that people who are working for our organization are able to represent us in a professional manner and be able to produce high quality work. They're able to do presentations on our account, things like that. So focusing on your communication skills, I think, is something that you don't think about when you're going to a STEM field quite as much. You think about the technical stuff, the quantitative stuff, but the communication and the interpersonal skills can get you super far. I highly recommend taking a writing course if you can, or visiting an academic writing center, or getting help from peers or professors to develop those writing skills. Again, it goes a long way. And then I also put show your passion and be yourself. It does sound cheesy, but this does actually show through in interviews, especially when we get applicants who might have lots of really relevant experience, but they don't seem keen or excited. They generally don't get the job because it's a competitive job market. We really want someone who wants to be there, who's passionate about this kind of work. And yeah. Highlighting your leadership skills, and also if you don't have them, just developing your leadership skills. So I did the Emerging Leaders program at the U of A, and I attended leadership conferences and programs from junior high to university. And I really think that that did help as well to kind of bolster my leadership abilities and be able to apply that in the workplace. Lastly, my final piece of advice is to always tailor your cover letter heavily for each job, even if there are lots. Use keywords from the job description, use concrete examples to touch on all of the different qualifications that they're looking for, and apply for everything, even if you aren't completely qualified, as you never know what may come of it. So thank you very much. Please reach out if you would like to chat further. Otherwise, I'll be around for a bit of the breakout period if you have any questions. And again, I love my job. I love the path that I've taken. I have absolutely no regrets, and I would highly recommend going into biology or any other STEM field. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. It was really interesting to hear all about your experience. And so since she will still be here for the networking session, we can actually begin it right now. So I believe it'll be Logan, Graham, and Nikki. So feel free to move around in the breakout rooms, ask your questions, spark your interest, and we will call you back to the main room when it is time for closing. So yeah, go ahead.
Mariah, are we supposed to jump into a breakout room, or are we being assigned one?
Give me a moment here. Sorry, it's a bit difficulty.
There we go. Okay.